I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking to Glenn Neargarder. Glenn became a Christian in 1988, spent time in the ministry, administration, and went on to work at Bank of America. In trying to help his home church with their administration, he uncovered what is often the weakest part of many churches: having a coherent and complete administrative system. He started a passion project to serve small churches by doing all the administration functions for them at extremely low cost. Glenn will be a speaker at the Climb Conference in Dallas this year. If you've ever been frustrated with your church's financial situation and are looking for a low-cost, one-stop solution, you need to listen to what Glenn is talking about. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. The Climb Conference is next month. It's going to be awesome. I've been planning with Joel Pete and Joel Nagel. We've been brainstorming, coming up with ideas for it, and we are so pumped. We're just looking forward to seeing you there. And looking forward to all the teaching and the fellowship. It's going to be so encouraging. It's going to be a whole bunch of people who are fired up to advance the kingdom of God, all coming together to share ideas, to learn, to encourage one another, to make friends. It's going to be an amazing time. That's November 30th through December 3rd this year, 2023 in Dallas, Texas. It's time to register. If you haven't registered, do it now. Go to robskinner.com. and register for the conference. Get your flights there. If you've been wavering, please just decide, just do it, because you will not regret it after coming to this conference. You're going to go, man, that was one of the best decisions I made in 2023. You're going to be given tools. You're going to be given inspiration. You're going to meet new people. You're going to make new contacts. You're going to learn stuff that you didn't know you needed to know. If you're going to be a great disciple, a strong disciple, a grower, because you're going to be surrounded by people who are ambitious and strong and want to grow, and who are really going through the challenges that you're facing as a disciple. That's what's so powerful. You get around people that they get you. They understand what you're going through. They both can sympathize, but at the same time, they can inspire. They can call you higher, and that's exactly the kind of environment that growers like you really need to be a strong disciple who multiplies disciples, leaders, and churches. Glenn, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you.
You contacted me a while ago asking about the Climb Conference and talking about a service that you provide through your company, Church Admin, Inc. And so looking forward to talking about that, but let's talk a little bit about your background. How'd you become a Christian?
Well, I initially came because I was hungry. So my older brother was a part of the church, and I was in my first year of college, and he had asked some individuals from his church that were there, the campus ministry, to come reach out to me. So they would come every Tuesday and knock on my door, my dorm room door, and always ask me to do these Bible talks, which I had no interest in going to. But one day they came and they knocked and they said they had free tacos, and I had missed dinner and had no money. And so I said, well, what do I have to do? And they said, nothing. And I said, how long is it? And they said, 20 minutes. So I said, if I come and I sit for 20 minutes, I don't have to answer any questions. I can eat as many tacos as I want. And they said, yeah. And I said, I'm there. So I went. That was my first. That was kind of what got me into it initially. And then I think they asked me to study the Bible afterwards, and I said yes, but I meant to say no. I think I felt guilty because I had I think 12 tacos, and I thought, well, these are my brother's friends. I'll do one study and then I'll say no. And then they did the love of God study with me, and I was hooked. And I was brought up Catholic and went to Catholic mass, my whole life, but never really caught it. And they studied the Bible, and it only took a couple of weeks, and I got baptized, and ever since it's just been it's been great. So God's really blessed my life.
What university was that?
The University of Cincinnati.
Okay, so you're from the Midwest.
Yeah.
And is that where you live now?
No, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay. And how'd you meet your wife?
So we met in the campus ministry there in Cincinnati. So we kind of knew of each other for a couple of years. We're around each other for a few years. It wasn't until after we knew each other for probably a good 3 years before we started dating towards the end of our college, and got married immediately after. So
now, was Kevin Maines leading your church at that time?
he was there. He was not leading it at that time. So when I first came, or when I first got baptized, it was Bob Harple, and then after that, it was Kurt and Patty Simmons.
Got it. Okay. Well, how did you get into church administration? Maybe you could just give me a quick rundown of where you've been since college and what you've done.
Immediately after college, my wife and we went into the ministry, the full-time ministry in Chicago. And so we were in Chicago for 2 years, and then we led the campus ministry at Champaign, Urbana for a year. And then we were asked to move out to Los Angeles. That was when a lot of people were moving out to Los Angeles, but they didn't have a full-time ministry position for me. So they asked me to work in the office. I have a degree in electrical engineering and computer science. And so initially I had helped them with computer science, type of stuff for about 4 years. I worked there at the office. And that was when the administration for the entire country, all of the health benefits and everything were run out of that one office. There was about 30 full-time administrators in that office when I was there for those 4 years. So I got a really good feel of church administration from that. Went back into the ministry for another 3.5 years there in Los Angeles. Got out of the ministry. And then I worked in the secular job. I worked for Bank of America for 14 years. The last 7 years with them, I was a senior vice president of operations and mortgage servicing. And so I had offices all over the country, and some that are international. And I had a large enough organization that I got very, very good at operations. I had an HR partner. I had a legal partner. So I had to learn all of the HR stuff. I had to know human resources and payroll and all those things for different states and even different countries. And so, so from a church administration that we do now, it really applies because a lot of it comes around policies and procedures and human resources and those types of things, which I got a lot of exposure to in a corporate setting. And so then the last 7 years, I've been doing consulting work for large pharmaceutical firms, helping them run their businesses better. So that's kind of what I've done.
What a great background. So you've got ministry experience, church administration experience, then you've got lots of secular administrative experience, HR experience. So there's a lot going on there behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know Keith Rose?
Yeah, Keith was running the office when I was there, when I was in the office in 95 to 99, I want to say.
Gosh.
So he was running the office back then, yeah.
Wow, that must have been a really interesting time. That we'll have to talk about that on another podcast. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. You've got your private business, but then you've got like a side hustle that benefits small churches. Now, and that's one of the things that I try to do through this podcast is try to help those who want to plant churches, those who are leading small churches. Why did you do this? And maybe you can explain the service you provide and why you even got into it?
Sure. So I moved from Los Angeles to Raleigh, North Carolina 3 years ago. And when I'd gotten here, they learned about my background, and they had asked me to join an HR committee. And I said, sure, I'm happy to help any way I can help. So once we got involved, I realized what they were really working on were policies and procedures. And I could tell this was going to be a tremendous amount of work. I was wondering why we were creating policies and procedures, why we weren't just grabbing policies and procedures that other churches have done and then just modifying them for ourselves. So I made some phone calls and called close to a dozen churches, large churches like Dallas and Boston and Chicago and even in LA. And then even some small churches that are only, 100 members, and tried to find some policies and procedures. And the church here is a church of about 600. And basically everyone, small and large churches, almost every one of them mentioned that they need help. Also, either they, almost none of them have good policies and procedures. Some of them were still using the 20-plus-year-old ICOC ones. And some of them had updated their procedures 10 years ago, but didn't feel comfortable loaning them out to anyone, only because they knew that they were outdated. And so they asked that when I figured out, can I help them? So I basically figured out that this was not a Raleigh church issue. This was really more of a kingdom issue that I think had progressed over time as we got further and further away, now 20, 23 years away from the time that we went from a centralized to a decentralized administration, right, that there just wasn't a good answer. So we sat down and I tried to, and I also realized that the church here of 600 had not had an administrator for about 3 years. I think they had a part-time person, opening mail and doing a few things here and there. And so we looked at options. I put some options together for my consulting hat, kind of went into, put that on. And we looked at secular companies. We looked at another brother has another company that does, this kind of work. We looked at that option. We looked at, hiring different companies, one for HR and one for bookkeeping and payroll, and looked at all of those options, the costs and everything, and they didn't love any of those options. I also have several businesses on the side. I'm very entrepreneurial. So I said, well, here's what I'll do, because it seems to be a bigger issue than Raleigh. I'll start a company. I'll pilot it with you. Let's just see how it goes. And, that can provide these services, because there's a lot of issues with a lot of the other options, which I can get into if you want me to. And so we tried it, and it's gone really, really well. I'm not necessarily trying to build a business, because I really just do it because I want to give back to the church. And I noticed that a lot of the volunteers were getting burned out. A lot of the elders and the evangelists were doing a lot of the work. They're not necessarily, no one's going to be proficient in everything, legal and HR and finances and investments and policies and procedures, and nobody has the time to do all that.
Right.
So the goal was to build an organization that had all these professional services, and then provided at a cost that was extremely reasonable for the small churches. They could afford it. So that's kind of what we're doing. So now we're not quite 2 years in, almost there. We've got 4 permanent employees that provide all of the services, and it's gone really, really well. I think we're up to 9 churches right now. I am the lead administrator for our church of 600, and it takes about 3 hours of my time a month is all it takes. And church admin employees do the rest of the work. And so that's kind of the story.
Okay. So that's pretty awesome. Okay. For me, the thought of that just gives me a headache. I mean, it's like church administration. I'm glad that there are people like you who are doing this, because, it's kind of like whenever we would cross the San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, my wife and I would just talk about, like, how'd they even start? It's such a massive project to get all of the details and systems together that are necessary. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing in small churches in this area of administration? What's going on out there?
Sure. Every church is different and vastly different. I think a lot of it, because some churches have a strength. They'll have someone helping with administration that's an attorney, and so they tend to be very strong in that area. But then we find some pretty significant room for improvement, is what I'll call it, and say finances, or someone that's good with finances, but there's huge room for improvement in some of the HR and the policies and procedures. So some of the issues that we're seeing is that a lot of the smaller churches, they can't afford, obviously, to hire an administrator or potentially even a part-time administrator. And even if you have a full-time and a part-time administrator, no one person is typically going to be really good at all of those disciplines. So something is probably going to suffer. And so what we're noticing is that elders, deacons, evangelists, and some of your, strong leadership individuals are taking on a lot of this work as volunteers. And there's a lot of burnout. They're getting burned out. And what we tend to see is they do really well for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and they're burned out. And so they do the bare minimum. And so there's a lot of things that aren't getting done. Not only necessarily not getting done well, they're just not getting done. People who haven't had a good financial report and really understand where their finances are until 6 months after, which is too late to really make good decisions. Policies and procedures that aren't there, they're totally missing. Those types of things are going on out there. And just I think when you talk to the small church leaders, they're just overwhelmed. They don't know, there's no answer that they can find. There's no company out there, I think, until we came along, that could really come in and provide the service, because we come in there to partner with them, and we do whatever is needed. We're not just like, here's the list of the services that we provide. We're there to provide any service that an administrator would typically do, to try to remove as much of the administration work as possible so that they can focus in on the ministry and feel confident and sleep well at night that they're not going to get into financial trouble or legal trouble. So
okay. I've got about 15 questions I want to ask you, because this is so interesting to me. So I want to just, first of all, give me a list of the services you do provide. So what if a person, let's say a person's listening out there like, yes, I definitely need help my administration. What can you do for them, Glenn?
Sure. So, we have basically, from one perspective, our heart is, and our focus is, you tell us what you need. There's nothing we won't do, because the point is to remove the work from those so they can focus it on the ministry. But generally speaking, some of the areas you're talking about, human resources, onboarding and hiring and job descriptions and offer letters, and if you get into trouble, counseling and exiting and terminations and how to handle all those things. And then salary models. We got a whole, I went through months and months trying to come up with a salary model. We came up with a salary model that actually, I think, works. Unlike everyone else is trying. We got finances and payroll and bookkeeping and tax support and audit support, technology if people want it, and website and social media, legal, nonprofit statuses, contract reviews. We have a legal firm that we hire, that we use. We also have a tax firm that we hire, that we use for all of our questions. So we get professional, those that are professionally trained in nonprofit and churches. Policies and procedures, and then other stuff, newsletters, volunteer coordination, event planning, the kind of stuff that just takes a lot of time. Kingdom Kids coordination, that kind of stuff. The policies and procedures, we spent a year and read over 450 different policies and procedures from churches in the ICOC, churches outside, secular, to come up with a core set of policies and procedures. We had 3 different attorney firms look over different sections depending on what they specialized in. And all of that is 100% free. We just want to give that to churches so that they have it, so that they are protected. And if even that, having those templates, is even overwhelming to people, we're happy to, for a small fee to try to work with them and take what makes sense and get that set up in their church as quickly as possible. So.
Okay, what would happen? Let's say you're in a small church in a foreign country. You're outside the States. Of course, That's foreign to me at least, but some other country. Do you service churches in different countries?
We don't at this point. We're open to it. Our policies and procedures are specifically written using the ISO 9000, which is the international standards. So they can pretty much be used in just about any country. The people that work permanently for church admin are in different countries. So we're in basically every time zone. We have coverage in just about every time zone across the world. So we're very open to helping other countries, and I think we're positioned for it. But at this point, we have not.
So what are you saying? Are you saying you could do it, but you just don't currently serve any churches that are overseas right now?
Correct. No one has approached us, and we're not out there really advertising.
Okay, but
if someone approached us, we would.
Let's say someone's listening in Australia or some other place and like, wow, that'd be a great opportunity. They could just call you and see if it's a possibility. So you could serve a church in a foreign country. You're just not currently doing it.
Correct.
Okay. That's an important distinction. What's the onboarding process like? Like, is this really, most ministers that I know, it's like, it's, what do they say about draining the swamp? Like, it's hard to, you're so busy with your day-to-day work. It's hard to like slow down and just go, okay, we're going to make a change here. What does it look like in terms of shifting over from, let's say you've got a super time-strapped administrator or a person part-time to going in and working with you as a company?
Yeah. So typically churches that are interested will sit down and talk with their board and their evangelists and leadership team to share what we have to offer and figure out what a good fit is, what a good partnership looks like. Because I think in many cases, it looks a little bit differently for each church, and we're very flexible. Like I said, we're here to kind of do whatever the church needs us to do. And then we move forward from there. So it usually happens pretty quickly. Usually only takes a couple of weeks for us to transition and take over just about everything. So, we have a checklist that we kind of go through as far as setting things up. And some of it depends on the services we provide. Most churches, they hire us to provide all of the services.
Right.
Economies of scale, it's not a whole lot more to just do everything.
What surprises me is that I was just thinking like payroll and pretty much that's it. And what you're saying is you get involved in like event organization, Kids Kingdom. I mean, that's a lot more than what I would anticipate an administrative service providing.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about some of the areas that individuals in the church get overwhelmed with or burned out with is, say, coordinating children's ministry, all of the teachers and all that kind of stuff, or these events. If it's a church that has a lot of events, it's hard to find someone. So we can do a significant amount of that remotely and do the heavy lifting so that people can really focus in on the event, and whoever the children's ministry coordinator is can really focus in on the children and the curriculum instead of having to figure out, trying to coordinate all the teachers and who's on and that,
right.
That kind of stuff. That's very time consuming.
Oh my gosh.
Sort of challenging stuff for people to handle. And so you just kind of remove that, and it's easier to find volunteers too, right? So you've got someone and they're burned out, and everyone sees how burned out they are. And then they're like, I need a break. And then you go to the church and go, okay, who wants to fill in for this person? And they're like, I see them. I've heard them. There's no way I want to do that. So.
For being a part of a 600-person church, you really have a good hand on the pulse of what's going on in smaller churches. That's awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about cost structure. How much does it cost to sign up for your services?
Again, every situation is different depending on the size of the church and depending on what services they want. But I would say, generally speaking, for a small church, if you're talking 100 and 150 people, depending on what you want, it's going to be our services are going to be somewhere between $250 to $350 a month. And then there'll be a small fee for things like QuickBooks, software, that kind of stuff. So,
okay, that doesn't even seem to make sense. Like, how can you afford to do it at that price?
Yeah. Well, I volunteer my time. Like I said, I'm happy to do it. This is one of the ways I serve, the kingdom. And then, a lot of our employees are outside the country in areas that are financially more accommodating for, to keep the prices low. And it's a blessing for the churches here in the States to have that lower cost, but it's also a huge blessing for our brothers and sisters that are professionals in these areas that are in other countries. So even before this, one or two of the businesses I've owned, I hired brothers and sisters in other countries. And most of them are in situations where they were driving 2 hours one way to work, and, just very, very difficult situations. And, these are individuals who have bachelor's and master's degrees in finance and have been working for 20 years. I mean, they're true professionals. And then, the services like legal and tax, those kind of things, I support those with individuals inside of the United States because they have the knowledge that is needed.
Wow. Okay. So most of your employees live overseas. They're all over the world. That's pretty awesome. I want to wrap this up. You're going to be speaking at a roundtable for small churches at the Climb Conference next month. Thank you so much for doing that. What do you hope to talk about and to provide when you get together in Dallas?
Part of it is, I still feel that we're new at this. I'm still learning and understanding what the needs are for the smaller churches. I would love to hear from them what their needs are and answer questions. I would love to provide as much guidance as I can. Like I said, I think most of them that we talk to are a bit overwhelmed, or if they're not overwhelmed, they're just too busy. In a small church, you wear many hats, and then board members are often have full-time jobs, right? So whatever we can do while we're there to answer questions, provide guidance, we're happy to do, whatever we possibly can at that time. So
that's great. Glenn, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for what you're doing. And what I get a sense of, this is just kind of not even a side hustle. It's more just a side project that you're doing to benefit the kingdom. Is that right?
Yeah, I suppose at times I call it a passion project. I mean, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy working with the churches, and, it's always possible it gets big enough that it becomes my main job. I'm not opposed to that.
Right.
But my main focus is not to make it to build up a business. My focus is really just to support and provide services and help people and help churches.
So it could scale up. You've got the capacity to scale up if you need to.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you at the Climb Conference next month. And it's going to be a great, great time together. Thank you for what you're doing, Glenn. Oh, one final thing. How does someone get a hold of you? If they're interested in what you're providing, where do they reach you?
The best thing to do is to go to our website at churchadm.com. And on there, you'll see our contact information. And they can contact me directly from there.
That's terrific. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, hit the subscribe button and send a link to your friends. Let people know about it. It's one of the great things I hear is people sharing. Oh, I heard this on the Rob Skinner podcast. Super encouraging. Just let people know. Spread the word. People can listen and be encouraged. Secondly, read and review one of my books, either How to Plant and Grow a Church or Courage, How to Make This Life Count. You can find those on Amazon.com. It was really encouraging. I was talking to Phil Booker, and he taught Courage at a midweek, and it was really encouraging. I taught his final class. He asked me to do it online over Zoom, and I was so thrilled that he had just ordered all the books for his church, and they went through it on a Wednesday and talked about it and talked about how the kind of courage that God wants us to. And so that was very, very gratifying. So thank you, Phil, for that. Finally, support the Rob Skinner podcast with a gift. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for your support, because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, to live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.